What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla Spine, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very important day for NIO as we have its earnings coming out. So I'm going to give you guys a very quick preview about NIO's earnings, breakdown what you should be watching for as time progresses, and how things are looking in my honest opinion. But before I begin the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening to NIO. NIO is currently down 7.79%, and it wasn't just NIO. Tesla was also down over 7% after we got some bad Chinese data. So what happened in China was I saw this big decline in sales for the month of February, and there are many talks out there and a lot of speculation that had to do with Chinese New Year. I do believe that Chinese New Year did play a role in why we saw this big decline in sales, but there could be other factors as well. For Tesla, we saw their sales drop to a 14-month low, at least in China. That was a very, very big decline, which is leading to some fear amongst investors. And also for the past 2 quarters, relative to before, we actually saw a 6% decline in Tesla. So that's very important too when it comes to deliveries. So for NIO also we were anticipating some downside. I called this out yesterday. I said this about Tesla, and even the market SPY did close a little bit in the red. And this is no surprise to us, right? We predicted this price action had happened, a little bit of downside, right? But for NIO, even though NIO has been sinking quite a bit, whether this thing gets a big bounce or not is going to depend on its earnings. So I want to talk more about some data and earnings before I break down the charts for these different tickers. So starting off with some economic data, tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, March 5th. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI. Then we have the Services PMI report coming out at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for the first 30 minutes tomorrow, expect some high volatility, and we'll see what happens after that. We also have Barr giving a speech at 12 p.m. and at 3:30 p.m. we have Barr giving another speech, and that's pretty much it for tomorrow. So a lot of data is coming out when it comes to the PMI report. Then we also have the new orders, which is going to be very important for how we see inflationary data, the gauges for that, and all that. And services prices will also be reported, so that's going to be important as well. So watch and see what happens at these times. But expect some volatility for the first 30 minutes. Besides that, we have some earnings that just came out. GitLab just announced its earnings. I'll talk about this just very briefly. And then we have NIO announcing earnings tomorrow before the market opens. I'll give you guys a quick preview in just a minute. So for GitLab, just as a reminder, this thing ended up getting revenue at 163.8 million. And we saw their overall net income per share at about 15 cents. The net loss per share was about 23 cents. Not the best, kind of so-so earnings, but their guidance was very, very weak, unfortunately. Weak guidance caused the share price to absolutely crash, especially looking at the fiscal 2025 outlook. Things are not as what we were basically hoping for. And they may vary according to the report, but it is what it is. With the weak guidance, we saw the share price just plummet. Now, let's talk about NIO. Let's transition to NIO. What's happening with NIO? NIO has the Q4 earnings reports tomorrow for March 5th, and it's going to be very interesting. The data is going to be coming out an hour, not maybe like about an hour, maybe a little bit earlier than that, before the market opens tomorrow. So I'll be watching to see what ends up happening to NIO. So NIO beat EPS for the third quarter, but missed on revenue estimates. And now what analysts are saying is we're seeing a loss of about 55 cents per share and revenue about $2.34 billion in the fourth quarter. Now, can you end up achieving that? We'll have to wait and see. In the previous year, we saw about 2.33 billion in their revenue. They actually did quite well for that. So we'll see if we end up beating estimates or not. So watch for that. And then on top of this, the net loss was around 44 cents per share, at least in the fourth quarter during the last year. So we're expecting a somewhat bigger loss as those margins are actually getting very, very stringent right now. And I also want to add that guidance from the company called for revenue to be in the range of 2.2 billion to 2.29 billion. So we'll see if we get some good guidance like that. That being said, whatever happens to NIO is going to be very important. Their earnings are going to be huge. We'll see if they beat on EPS and revenue. And then guidance is going to be key for NIO because whatever they announce about any future models or what they announce about future plans is going to be very important. We're going to see if investors get wowed because we could see a very, very big move. We'll see if NIO pumps or not. So I want everyone to be very, very careful with the way things are moving. So with that being said, Even though a lot of EVs like Tesla and NIO are down, it is not necessarily the end of the world. We still have a lot of time to make a nice recovery. On top of this, the NIO EV Tech has signed a deal with a high voltage system, which is actually good news for them. That's actually very, very awesome because it's going to help them improve a lot of the functionalities of their vehicles, and it's going to help them improve different voltage systems. So I heard that's a very, very good piece of news for them. This is going to be important for the parts supplier, and that's great news as well. So that's going to be very, very awesome. They're going to work together to create what are known as IPUs, which are intelligent power units, which enable core components to be shared across different vehicles. That's good news for them, and this is going to be very, very good for learning. I can't wait to see how this continues for them. So that's some good news. And then when it comes to other pieces of data, I just want to call out that we had about 93 million in volume. So we got some high volume selling on NIO and Tesla. Short volume is coming back up, which is kind of like a negative sign. But JP Morgan is kind of giving them an underweight rating. We also are seeing the price price ratio dropping, so that's actually a sign of weakness for NIO. And none of this data in terms of seasonality matters as much for tomorrow since we're just reacting to earnings. So we'll see how it ends up going. I hope NIO does well. I really hope they do well, guys. That's my honest opinion, because that's going to be their only hope to save them from this downtrend that we're in. If NIO reports strong earnings, this thing could bounce and make its way back up to 6 plus. If we're bearish, a big drop could be coming. We could end up losing $5 and break to a new low. So please be very, very careful. Now, I just wanted to call out that when looking at the chart like this, the MACD is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And we're nearing a bearish cross in the PPO. So the chart does look a bit more bearish on the daily time frame. This suggests that there's going to be a risk of more downside, at least from a technical standpoint, but technicals are not everything. If NIO drops after earnings tomorrow, we could be hitting $5 or losing it. If we bounce, watch it break 5.8 and push it for 6 plus after that, and 6.4 above that. Do we break to 6, then 6.4, or do we end up getting a rug pull down to 5, if not the 4.5 area? It all depends on earnings. The chart is looking kind of bearish, so just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see how it goes. For SPY, SPY is on this nice uptrend. Daily is still on a very, very strong uptrend. You can see how it's bouncing off the 20 EMA. But I want to call out that we have a potential topping candle that could be forming. We need to see a confirmed move all the way down to 509 and see how SPY reacts to that. So it is possible to test 509 then bounces. We'll have to see if we get a rejection or not. There, in my opinion, is a risk of that potentially happening. So we might see 509. Tesla is looking very, very weak on the daily. If we get a follow through move, we could be looking for this thing to hit 184. So watch and see if Tesla could bounce, get back up of 190 and 192, or do we lose 188 and continue to sink to 186 and 184? My guts does tell me it's looking kind of weak, so I wouldn't necessarily turn too bullish quite yet. There is a risk of more downside looking at this big trend. If we get a negative crossover on the PPO and we get a follow through move, 184 is a real possibility for Tesla, so please be very, very careful. On top of this, I want to call out Aapl stock. Aapl has been sinking quite a bit. It's very weak, but it's trying to base at 174. If we bounce off 174, we do have a gap to fill all the way back up to 179. If we lose 174, 172.5 is a real possibility. For the QQQ, exactly as predicted, we came down a bit. We're at 444. If we lose this, watch 442 to see if we bounce or not. If we bounce off this, we're going to be fine. If we fail, we're going to drop. It could drop a little bit more, so just be a little bit careful. Nvda is still holding up nicely, but it did get this big rejection off 876, and we do have a gap below. It's on a strong uptrend, so it hasn't really lost 850 yet, so we'll just have to see if that happens. But overall, Nvidia is leading the market. It's still doing very, very well. With that being said, that's it for the main 5 I typically go over. Some stocks look kind of strong like Nvidia. Tesla's showing weakness. SPY looks like it could drop a little bit. QQQ as well. And Aapl looks like it could attempt to hold up. So very mixed market. NIO is in the middle as well. Technicals do look kind of bearish. I could see this thing dropping more, but I'm not going to solely trade based off technicals. Earnings are going to be keen. We'll have to see what happens after that. So that being said, let's see what happens after NIO's earnings come out. It's going to be very big. Make sure you watch for their EPS and revenue expectations. Any news about their new models like the ES6. And I'm just going to wait and see before I make any announcements. So we'll wait and see how it goes. And with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Thank you and peace out.